Brooklyn Nets star Kevin Durant does indeed plan to sign that 4-year, $198 million extension that we have been talking about all week. He will become eligible on Saturday, and this is part of what will be more than $500 million, people. $580 million in contracts that the big three in Brooklyn are expected to sign. I mean, Jackie, that number alone is just crazy.
It's staggering, but I think we saw this when they brought on James Harden. They were serious about doing whatever it takes to get to the finish line. I'm actually really happy for Kevin Durant. I think it's a great place for him. It's really a place to establish himself as the greatest Brooklyn Nets player perhaps that ever played. So I think this makes sense for him. I think he's done moving around.
Hats off to the Tsai family for coming in and really just reshaping that organization and doing what it has to do, even if that means going to the luxury tax to build an exciting team. And they're definitely going to reap the benefits from championships from here on out.
Yeah, I mean, woof. I think, you know you're giving that money once you make that trade, right? And every other team in the league would do the same if they could. But the fact that Brooklyn is able to, both in terms of having those bodies in the gym and then having an owner who can, in fact, put forth that much moolah, man, it's just a lot thinking about it. More than $500 million is going to be agreed to this offseason between just those big three in Brooklyn. All right, a little breaking news. Circle around if you're just joining us. Bobby Marks on this show confirmed that Kawhi Leonard will return to the Clippers. Terms still being discussed. But, Jackie, how do the Clippers move forward with Kawhi back? And he's going to be rehabbing most, if not all, of this season.
Well, this was a marriage that, you were talking before about off-the-record things that go on. I think this was always going to happen for Kawhi. I think he made it clear he's home. The Clippers have made so many allowances to him in terms of his own personal training staff, being able to go home to San Diego. And I'll say it again, $36 million is what he turned down with a torn ACL. It is good to be Kawhi Leonard. And you know what? He actually he deserves it.
Agreed. I don't think this is a surprise to anyone. I kind of just think it was optics when he initially opted out to just kind of weigh the market.
For next year, he has stressed multiple times he has not publicly requested a trade to the Blazers, who, of course, themselves have stayed pretty quiet during free agency. And Dame did give his thoughts, though, on Portland's move so far. Take a listen.
We wasn't able to go out there and just get, some of the guys that we would have liked. And, you go down the list and you go through the guys that you like that are out there that haven't committed to another team or that was a part of your plans in free agency, and you get the ones that that want to be a part of what you're doing. And I think that's what we did.
All right, so hearing that, Bobby, what should we look for next with Dame's future in Portland?
Yeah, I think this is going to play out a little bit, Rachel. I think Lillard will go to training camp. I expect him to be in a Trailblazer uniform, and this is something that will, when we get to December or January, based on where this Portland team is, and he looks at the pieces that are around him. I mean, they brought Norman Powell back, but then it was all bargain shopping. Cody Zeller, Ben McLemore, Tony Snell. That's kind of your bench for the veteran minimum. And they don't have much out there except for maybe flipping CJ McCollum. So I think this plays out, and the season will basically dictate as far as what Lillard's future is going to be here in Portland.
Matt, it's an interesting position for him as a player because one of the sort of backbones of his tenure in Portland has been how loyal he has been to the franchise, how he's talked about not wanting to just run off and join a super team. But if the front office isn't doing what you think they need to do, does that put you in a rock and a hard place? Because Bobby's talking about maybe asking for a trade mid-season, and that just doesn't seem like it's in Dame Lillard's character.
I think Dame is doing everything he's supposed to do as a player and a leader of that organization and sticking to the script. But I think without being said, this management and front office has a lot of pressure on them. They haven't really done anything significant to make this team a real contender yet in the offseason. Like you said, they can still play with the CJ McCollum and see what they could possibly get with him. But it'll be interesting to see. I mean, loyalty is great, and we all want that loyalty. But at the end of the day, are you going to continue to waste? I wouldn't say waste because they've had some good runs, but are you continue to spend your prime years in a situation where you're not going to be able to win a championship? So we'll have to see how this continues to play out, and it'll be interesting to see if come January that they're in the middle of the pack or towards the bottom, of the playoff seeding if he does ask for a trade.
Well, speaking of a guy who so far has hitched his wagon to a franchise that is probably not contending for the top of this conference, let's go over to the East and talk about Bradley Beal, could have requested a trade before the draft, chose not to. The Wizards instead traded Russell Westbrook, of course, to the Lakers on draft night. The ensuing 5-team deal, Bobby, you're going to need a new flow chart just for this deal, ultimately led to a whole collection of players moving. Spencer Dinwiddie, Kyle Kuzma, KCP, who we should note, he is a good friend of Bradley Beal. So that's an important relationship there. Montrezl Harrell, Aaron Holiday, and more. So, Bobby, Brad does have that extension decision coming up. What does he have to decide next in Washington and when?
Yeah, he still has a little bit of time. That extension would not start until October 1st as far as for him to make a decision. But it's interesting, Rachel. After the season, Tommy Shepard, their general manager, just said that this roster is basically not good enough, and there's going to be a lot of different faces. And he basically took Russell Westbrook into, as you mentioned, Spencer Dinwiddie, and the three from the Lakers, certainly Aaron Holiday. And I think I would trust Tommy. He went out and got Daniel Gafford at the trade deadline, so it shows that they can try to add talent around Bradley. So I think this is another situation that basically plays out itself, and we'll see where this Wizards team is, mid-season. They're not up there where, Brooklyn and, of course, Miami, Milwaukee, Philadelphia, some of those other teams. But it is hard to go from kind of that 5 to 8 seed to jump into that top 3.
I like what they've done this offseason. To me, it was a little bit more of a sense of urgency, counter to what Portland did, which was, grab a few bench pieces. They've added some solid pieces to this team. And although it's top heavy in the East, I see this team anywhere from 5 to 8. You know what I mean? They added a lot of depth. Aaron Holiday is someone solid who's kind of being looked over. I know Montrezl is ready to have a big season. I know Kuz is better to have a big season. They've added some other pieces. So I like what they've done. Again, I agree with you guys. I don't think they're going to be contending for a title, but they'll definitely be in the mix of that, middle to lower half of the Eastern Conference playoff seeding.
Well, look, if you could make it into the playoffs, not just the play-in, and if you can even win one series, that will be considered a win in Washington, D.C. Not every team's goals are exactly the same every season. I do want to go up I-95 to Philadelphia because the future of Ben Simmons still up in the air. The 3-time All-Star does have 4 more years left on his contract, so that's always important to remember. The Sixers have some time, except also reports are swirling of how much, if any, interaction the two parties have had this summer. It really sounds like most is just being directed through Ben's agent, Rich Paul. So, Bobby, what should we be looking for with Simmons in this situation?
Yeah, I mean, he's another guy. I think we're going to see Ben Simmons in a Sixer uniform when training camp goes, unless the asking price from Daryl Morey, their president, kind of gets a little bit lower here. He's not for everyone, right? He's not for all 29 teams. I think you have to have a certain role, certainly all NBA from a defensive standpoint, but he's different than what James Harden went through a year ago, where you could line up 29 teams and 29 teams would want James Harden on their roster, where Simmons, has to fit a certain role here. And if the asking price gets lower, then yeah, maybe we could see him moved. But when you have a player with 4 years, $147 million left on your contract, you're just not looking to kind of give him away.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit it on the head. They've been asking for a king's ransom, so I think their requests for what they're going to get in exchange will have to come down for him to move. But this is going to be interesting because I don't know how true the reports are, but if there has been no communication with teammates or management, I said last week, and I don't know if the rest of the panel agreed with me, I think what has been said has already kind of the writings on the wall. I don't really know if you can get him back there with the right mindset with the rest of his teammates to really make something of it. But again, he's locked in for 4 more years, so we're going to have to see. But I think if they are going to trade him, I think you made a great point. They're going to have to, be more reasonable with their what they're going to get in return.
It's such a tough question, this one, because yes, some of the toothpaste has left the tube, as Zach Lowe has said about this situation, and we've seen some edginess and hurt feelings. And you want to go into a season like this with your team being your team, and guys feeling like the guys in training camp are the guys they're going to go to battle with. And we've been talking all show about how deep the Eastern Conference is this coming season. All that being said, Ben Simmons' value is significantly lower now after a poor playoff performance, and when everybody in the league knows the Sixers are looking to deal him, than it will be as we get closer to the trade deadline. If you look at the track record of Ben Simmons' regular seasons, he will be playing pretty well, probably barring an injury, by the time we get there, and that's when his value could be higher. So Daryl Morey in the front office has to really figure out, do they want to weigh sort of team chemistry as more important, or what they could get back for Ben Simmons is more important? And since we don't know the team chemistry quite specifically, only they can offer that. But we'll find out, Bobby, right? We'll be watching.
We will. As they say, you're usually in a honeymoon period in the offseason, but I think for Philadelphia and Portland, that we're not in a honeymoon period
Nope.
here, as far as what your roster looks like.
Well, we hope you're in a sleeping period at some point soon. Maybe over the weekend you can expand out to 4.5 or 5 hours of sleep a night, Bobby. We'll see.
Hey, trust me, I've got no whiteboards in my house, so the whiteboards are safe.
All right, we will look for your next flow chart, though, sometime.